Welcome to the outlet with Kei-Touch. Yes, yes, happy Easter weekend to all. I know it's a great time for everyone to be with their family and just really enjoy themselves. And today, we are going to enjoy ourselves. It is just something. I have two Ricks on the show today. That's something. I have Start off with Rick Martin. Rick Martin is a three-time Peabody Award-winning journalist, crisis communications expert, and motivational speaker with a passion for storytelling and leadership. And he is also an author. And today, he is joining us to talk about his journey and his book, Unmasked: Overcoming Death, a story of family, faith, and forgiveness. He is joined today with his daughter, Natalie. Welcome to the outlet with Kei-Touch, Rick Martin and Natalie Martin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so humbled to be here. And it's an honor to be here as well. And I couldn't enjoy this Easter weekend any more than I can, other than with my daughter Natalie. This means a lot. So thank you so much, DJ Kei-Touch, for having us.
Yes, I mean, it's just great to have you, and it's great to talk about this story, your journey, unmasked, overcoming death, a story of family, faith, and forgiveness. I mean, the title alone is powerful and says that there is a lot to this book, which you can also buy on rickmartinmedia.com. Rick, 2020, we were in a pandemic and it changed a lot of people's lives, especially yours. I know you have a passion for storytelling, so take us down this journey.
Well, 2020 impacted us all. The first case of COVID occurred early, like in March. Um, and what I could tell you, it occurred even before there, right? The official case. Um, but I could tell you, I was the director of communications and community relations for Douglas County, Georgia. And my job and responsibility was to disseminate the information from the CDC and the local health department. And that's what I was doing. Keep in mind, I, with a team, I had about 5 people on my team, and we were just working and operating round the clock, working from home, working, one at a time from the offices. Um, we were working with our public safety, fire and EMS officials, police as well. Um, but working was nonstop. And, you know, throughout the entire year, uh, we were watching the news and watching the number of deaths rise. And it was my team's responsibility to share to the public, face coverings, make sure you're wearing your face coverings properly, maintaining social distancing as well, and repeatedly washing their hands. Well, it just so happens as we continued that messaging throughout the year, 2 days before Christmas, I woke up with a sore throat and a fever. My wife said, I think we need to take you to the hospital. And as she wanted to take me to the hospital, she was very concerned because in 2019, I was hospitalized for the flu and pneumonia at the same time. But I got over that and I came back. Now, 2020, as we're on the way to the hospital, I didn't really have a good feeling. But we went ahead. Little did I know that as I was at the hospital, I would be there for 17 consecutive days
Wow.
and 5 days on a ventilator. And I didn't wake up until January 1st, 2021. I was isolated, I was alone. I was taken by ambulance, I think January 12th, to a rehabilitation center 45 minutes away. Um, and still, I wasn't allowed to see my family, my wife, my daughters. Uh, my parents, who are dearly still alive, uh, couldn't visit in 2020. And, so it was a traumatic experience. And I'm just so happy and thrilled to be here, though.
Yes, we're glad to have you. Glad that you overcame death and you're here to share a story and you're able to tell your story, your journey. And with this, I wanted to ask you, just jumping around a little, what do you want people to take away from your book, from your story, from your journey? rickmartinmedia.com to purchase the book.
What I think was really important, what I want everyone, if they could and if they would, take the time to understand your stress is your health. It's important. Your health is your wealth, is what I wanted to say directly. And you've got to manage your stress. It's so important to manage your stress. In 2000, um, in 2019, actually 2009, excuse me, when I was working at CNN, I was under a lot of great deal of stress, working where I was under deadline pressure, and it was stress that I was easily manageable. And I learned how to manage it along with my wife. What I realized that in covering news as long as I was, always able to respond to breaking news quickly, getting crews there fast, and operating in an effective manner. I learned I was great at handling stress then when I was younger. But then older, having two daughters, a family life, busy life, I was having difficulty managing stress.
Mhm.
And my wife and I came home telling her, I'm like, look, I've got to figure out how to stay in this career that I love, how to manage this situation so I can be effective, manage the stress and not let the stress manage me. So we developed LASER. LASER is an acronym, and it's an acronym that, what we learned and decided was that you cannot just be focused on managing your stress. You have to be laser focused. And in that, we learned LASER stands for L, listen, A, assess, S, support, E, execute, and R, respond. And it's critical that I was able to um, be effective and manage that, But it also what's helpful too is Natalie will tell you, and I'll tell her, how many times has I've had to use it. Tell tell the audience how many times I've had to use laser.
Every day.
Every day. I mean, that's good though. That's good because you found a way to get through. Tell us what laser stands for again, right?
Sure. When stress hits, when you're caught in the middle of that state of mind to take flight or to fight, you've got to listen. Listen to your thoughts, listen to your body, the physical reaction that you're having to the stress. Listen to the thoughts in your mind. What's really important, if you're a praying person, that's the time when you pray. Pray on just relaxing to calm down. A, assess. Take a diagnostic examination of what's causing the stress. S, support. Ask for help if you need to ask for help. It's so important. So many of us suffer in silence, and that we don't have to. E, execute. Winning coaches will tell you don't just focus on a plan or the play, but executing is the key. And R, respond. Take action. Answer the call. Even Nike knows. Just do it. But it's important to respond. you know, um, and laser, what's really important too is know is that uh, engineers will tell you that a laser is a beam of light. Beam of light, metaphorically speaking, in the midst of darkness, a laser will help you see through difficult times. And as well, a laser, as engineers will tell you, metaphorically speaking, it's a beam of energy, and that energy is powerful enough to break through obstacles so you can see the other side. So don't just be focused on managing your stress. You got to be laser focused.
Laser focus. Look, it's Outlet with Kei-Touch here with Rick Martin, author of Unmasked, Overcoming Death a story of family, faith, and forgiveness. You can get this at rickmedia.com. Rickmedia.com. I mean, rickmartinmedia.com. My apologies. Rickmartinmedia.com and also on Amazon. I was ahead of myself a little bit, but Style Led with Kei-Touch. And you can tell Rick is such a professional, such a storyteller. We're going to get more into it on the other side. It's Style Led with Kei-Touch. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Outlet with Kei-Touch. Here with Rick Martin, author, Unmasked, Overcoming Death, a story of family, faith, and forgiveness. Rick, we were talking about laser. Listen, assess, support, execute, respond. I want to get to the support. You're in your book, you're talking about overcoming death, a story of family. That's what you said first, family.
Yes.
And you have your daughter with you today. Tell us a little bit about the support Natalie was able to give you, or Natalie, tell us a little bit about the support you were able to give your father during this time, 2020.
I could tell you that definitely when I got out of the hospital dealing with so much trauma from the experience, I needed my family, but I wasn't the same type of person, was I, Natalie?
No.
What was I like?
Well, first, my name is Natalie. I'm a sophomore at GW.
All right.
And I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So thank you for having us. When my dad originally got out of the hospital, I think, okay, so this was 2020, just had become 2021. So I was a sophomore in high school. So I was 15 years old. And when that's crazy, like I was 15, now I'm 19. That's crazy. Like the time flies. But
Yes.
when my dad originally got out of the hospital, I remember being confused because, of course, when someone's coming out of the hospital, we hadn't seen him in so long. So we were expecting him to be excited to be home, but we didn't actually understand that the healing process doesn't actually truly start until you kind of confront what you went through while you were in the hospital. So that was something that me, my sister, and my mom definitely had to talk about a lot because me and my sister were so confused. We're like, oh, we thought he'd be like happy to see us. And it wasn't necessarily that he wasn't happy to see us, but there was so much that went on in the hospital that we didn't know about and that he was holding inside, but he didn't necessarily have the right words to communicate that. But I think it also caused me to grow up really fast. Like I'm an older sibling, so I've always been used to helping out my parents, and they'll tell you that I'm kind of I'm kind of like the golden child. I pretty much have always like never really gotten in trouble. My parents have always had a lot of trust in me, and I've honestly, I would say our dynamic has always been more of a friendship. They step in as parents when I need them to, of course, but I think the situation it brought us closer in a lot of ways, but it also almost put me it was an interesting dynamic because being 15 and almost being looked at as another parent because my dad still needed help. So, for example, school was online at this point, and I had my high school did a situation where it was hybrid. So some days I would have class online, and some days I would go to school. There were some days where I was at home, and it was just an interesting thing. I was taking care of my dad. We used to make fun of him because when he got out of the ventilator, his voice was really high pitched because he wasn't able to talk. So he had a really, really high pitched voice. We used to say that he sounded like a baby for months afterwards. So we joke about that all the time. I remember having to watch him eat just to make sure he didn't choke. And sometimes I would set my computer up in the kitchen and and my teachers would see the TV on in the back and my dad would be sitting there and they'd be like, turn the TV off. I'm like, no, like I'm watching my dad. And it was just interesting because I mean, it also goes to you never really know what someone is going through. So it's always important to consider all situations and always speak with kindness because my teachers, I know a lot of the time would always ask, "Oh, why do you look so distracted?" It's like because I'm taking care of another person. So caretaking is also an interesting dynamic, especially being that young. But the skills that I was able to learn from taking care of my dad have helped me a lot in college as well.
Oh, it helped you mature.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She's kind of holding back a little bit too. One of the things I say holding back is, when I got out of the hospital, I was angry. I was depressed. To be candid, I was upset. And my mind wasn't working right. My mind wasn't working the way that I was used to, right? And that when I got out of the hospital, I was raw. I hadn't received counseling. I hadn't received an understanding of the trauma that I went through, why I went through. So lots of things were creeping into my mind, right? Things like, why didn't my family visit me? Couldn't they have visited me? Did they do? Did they? Did they work hard enough to try to reach me? When my eyes woke up, they weren't there. Why was I left behind? And that added tension and stress. But we had a solution, and I wanted to change that dynamic in a house. And I finally broke down and said, "Let's get a puppy." Chapter 15.
Yes. So
So,
chapter 15
mhm.
is called, wait,
The
is it
dog that
that dog
saved
that
me.
saved you? Well, all of us. My parents, I actually grew up with, I talk about this all the time. I grew up with a Maine Coon cat named Brayna. And for people who don't know what Maine Coons are, they're these giant cats. I have a picture of me at 2 laying with my cat, and the cat's literally bigger than me. But unfortunately, we had to give her away because my dad was allergic to her. But I still remember her, and I haven't had a pet since then. And so we had been begging for a puppy, and there was this whole not trend, but everyone's saying, "Oh, pandemic puppy, like you should get a puppy around this time." And so my dad was finally like, "Okay, we can get a puppy." And I had volunteered a lot at our animal shelter that was close to our house, so we started there. But a lot of the dogs needed extra care, and we were already taking care of my dad. So we were like, we probably don't also want a dog that's going to need a whole lot of extra attention. So we went to Petland, and we went to two. The first time we went, the first, oh, also, it was interesting because this was also Valentine's Day. And this was my dad's first time being out, like
Yeah.
in public. So that was really interesting because we knew that he needed help, but every time someone would ask to help him, he would say no. So he had his cane and he was kind of like hobbling through the pet store, and you could tell that he was frustrated, but at the same time, as soon as he like was able to see the puppies, his like face lit up. And so we didn't find a dog that we wanted at the first pet store. So we went to the second pet store, and my mom eyed this dog who is Felix. And then we like went in the playroom and played with him for like 30 minutes, and we
Yeah.
ended up leaving with him.
And that's how we got
We
Felix.
also did not expect to leave with a dog that day, like at all.
Yeah.
So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah. And the bottom line is I was trying. I was trying. No matter what stress I was going under and dealing with, I was trying not to suffer in silence.
And like you said, Rick, you were angry. You were angry. You were in the hospital for 17 days, 5 days on a ventilator, then in rehab for 12 days. So, with your family in your faith, you were able to overcome. What led you to say, I need to write a book about my
So
story?
actually, it wasn't even my idea. Um,
Okay.
I honestly, I was ready to get some counseling and move on with life. But a friend of mine, a resident, he's a novelist. His name is Jeffrey Blunt, and Jeffrey had called to check on me, and in our conversations of how I was doing, and then after, I was telling him a little more of what it was like, some of the rawness of the experience and everything, and he was like, "Man, you should write a book." And
Mm.
I'm like, "Huh?" I said, "Nah, bro, I cover stories, man. I did that, and I'm done with that. I'm in the communications professional field. I said, Rick, you should write a book." And I said, "Nah, man, my wife wouldn't go for it. My wife is one of the most private individuals and persons I've ever met in my life." So I told him, I said, "She's not going to go for it." And he goes, "Man, a lot of people, you will help a lot of people. A lot of people will be encouraged by what you went through and how you're doing now." And, that just kind of sat with me. And then I brought it up to my wife, and my wife said, "Yeah, go ahead." I'm like,
Wow.
wait, it must be a God thing. If my wife allowed me to write a book, it must be a God thing. I'm like, okay, God, you must be working in this now, because that, the earth just shifted when my wife said, hey, remember when I was
So how long did it take you to write the book? Once you decided I'm going to write this, how long did it take?
It was a process of 3 years.
Okay.
Um, and it wasn't just me writing, it took me being challenged.
Mm,
It took me being pushed. I went to places in writing the book that I didn't want to revisit.
mm.
The authenticity, the rawness brought back emotions I had to deal with. But in my work to deal with it, I was able to free myself. And in freeing myself, and man, to God be the glory, I have never been freer in my life. And at 55 years old, I'm just ready to share with the world. I went through this, I can make it through. If you go through something, you can make it through. Let's go.
Isn't that something how sometimes it takes a traumatic event for you to start living? I know that sounds wild, but it changes your whole life. You see life a whole nother way, and you're truly appreciative for things you weren't really appreciative of before. Speak to that briefly.
And what's so important about that, and I got to tell you, because I'm so passionate about that, and I really want to reach men. I want to reach men who've
Mm.
gone through traumatic experiences. Because if it wasn't for the patience and the deliberate effects of my wife and my daughters wanting to um, get me whole, it's I wouldn't be here. It takes grace, it takes accepting accountability, and it takes doing the work. It's that simple. But, we can do this. This isn't just about me. This is about everyone that helped me on this journey. From James Taylor, who volunteered his time and effort with producing the book cover, to the photographer, Brian Mobley, who took the picture in my backyard. This was community driven. This was to two nurses, that helped me in a hospital when my wife couldn't reach me, you know, and I mean, I'm inspired by community and love.
And it seemed like this whole experience humbled you. Look, Rick Martin, Natalie Martin, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Again, the book
Thank you.
Unmasked, Overcoming Death, a story of family, faith, and forgiveness. RickMartinMedia.com. That's Rick with a K, RickMartinMedia.com. You can also find this on Amazon, where
That's
everything
right.
is sold.
That's right.
Rick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you
Natalie,
so
thank
much.
you so
Yes.
much for
Thank you so
joining
much
to
for
me
having us.
today.
Thank you.
Yes.